Great leaders communicate two messages at the same time. You matter to me, and what you do matters.
Welcome to It Doesn't Take a Genius.
Ram! Hey, it's just me. Welcome to It Doesn't Take a Genius. Both of you. So, great opportunity, fantastic opportunity that I've had recently was Mark and I do a workshop series, and during that workshop series we invite amazing leaders in and we interview them in front of the class. And just in the last few months we've got to hear from, allow me to be a name dropper, folks like Rob Bello, Blaze Shaw, Ray Tucker, best-selling New York Times author Mike Abrashoff, COO, the KDG Auto Group, Bob Huser. And one of the things that stands out when you interview these people is the same message keeps coming through. They are high care, high expectation leaders. So what do I mean by that? These are folks who care deeply about their team members and yet at the same time have very high and unwavering standards for the work that needs to get done. And what's interesting is a lot of people think they need to choose between the two. Maybe that's not even it. Maybe they don't think they need to choose between the two, but they do have a natural tendency to do one or the other. Mark and I are big believers in DISC, the behavioral assessment tool. And DISC, when you look at it from the east and west perspective on the circumplex, you got D, I, S, and C. Well, if you look at the right side of the circumplex, the I and the S, what you find are people who are people-oriented. And so they tend to put the needs of people ahead of the tasks that need to be done, right? Or they can lean that way. If you look on the left side of the circumplex, what you see are the D's and the C's of the world. They tend to be more task-oriented. Yeah, we'll get things done. Some people may get left behind along the way, but that's okay. And what we learned from DISC is that everyone has a natural home base. Everybody can do all of these behaviors, right? Everybody can be task focused, everybody can be high care, but you do have a natural home base. So depending on which side of the circumplex you fall, when I'm talking about high care, high expectations, one comes much easier to you than the other. So let's dive into this. What are the implications of this? So, imagine a four-square grid. And in one corner we have low expectations and low care. So if you're a low expectation, low care leader, you could substitute the word, neglect. And so you lead through neglect, unclear standards, little coaching, when there is poor performance, it's not addressed. Employees feel unseen, unimportant, and unchallenged. When you think about the unspoken message here, I'm not invested in you, and I do not expect much from you. And then you wonder why, when you think about this form of leadership and you look at some recent studies where it shows only 20% of America's workforce are highly engaged in their work. And you wonder, is this a symptom of that, right? So let's look at the next box, high care, low expectations. What you could call the comfort box. So low care, low expectations, neglect. High care, low expectations, comfort. Right? The leader is kind, supportive, understanding, but delays the difficult conversations. Excuses are accepted. Poor performers are protected from consequences. They're tolerated. Strong performers in this system, in this team, in this department, end up carrying the weak performers. And so now I've got people who aren't being held accountable. They're allowed to continue, and resentment grows. So the high performers, they just don't understand why the manager doesn't do something. So people, managers who protect people from discomfort also keep them from growing. And what's that meme? They talk about the best way to discourage your high performers is to tolerate your low performers. And yeah, A players want to play with A players. And so when they feel that's not the case, yeah, they're unhappy, and sometimes they even make a decision to find another place of employment. All right, let's look at the opposite of this, and maybe you've worked for this person. Low care, high expectations. We could call this the pressure box. Results matter more than relationships. Pressure, threats, fear drives performance. This may produce short-term activity, but trust, initiative, and retention decline. So this works for a little while, but eventually people get tired of it. They get tired of the relentless pushing without the care. And if there's fear, sometimes people start to hide mistakes. They stop taking risks. Maybe they only tell the manager what they'd like to hear. And so fear can create compliance, but rarely commitment. And so when you think about compliance versus commitment, we've talked about this before. Compliance is I do it as long as the threat, the fear, that you're watching me. But I don't understand the why, and I don't care. Commitment is I do it even when the manager is not watching me. I do it because it's the right thing to do, and that I care about the organization, I care about success, I care about the manager, and I want to make things work properly. All right, let's look at high care and high expectations. Let's call this the growth box. The leader says, through their behaviors, I value you and I believe in you. I will support you, but I will not lower the standard. Related ideas include, you've heard the warm defender. Mark and I have taken a dive into the works titled Radical Candor. And then you've also heard it talked about as high support, high challenge leadership. And so the relationship does not replace accountability. It makes accountability possible. Covey talked about this when he talked about great leaders must make investments into the team members, a trust account, because occasionally we'll have to make a withdrawal. And if you haven't invested in this employee, they don't trust you. They don't believe that you care about not only their career, but their personal well-being, then it's impossible to draw upon an account where you haven't made any contributions. So let's talk about expectations. Expectations communicate belief. Expectations are not merely performance standards. They reveal what the leader believes. So as a leader says, this is my line in the sand. This is absolutely what must happen. So we communicate as leaders. This is what I believe. These are the cornerstones to success. And leaders who genuinely believe employees tend to provide more coaching, more feedback, more opportunities, and patience during development. So if I am concerned about you and your personal well-being and your professional well-being, and I have high expectations, I know that the only way to get there is to be highly engaged with you as the leader. All right. And Mark and I have talked, we have talked so much about coaching, feedback, opportunities, catching people doing something right. When you see it, say it. Clarity is kindness. You can be direct with respect. We've talked about this so many ways. So compare these messages. Low belief. You've never been very good at follow-up. High belief. Your follow-up is not yet up to the level we need, but I know you can improve it. And we will build a system together. High expectations should communicate confidence, not condemnation. Right. So the idea that yeah, I have confidence in you. We're not there yet, but I believe that you can get there. And I wouldn't be having this conversation with you if I didn't believe that that level of work was possible by you. So let's talk about care for a second. Care is more than being nice. Care does not mean avoiding conflict, approving every request, excusing repeated poor performance. Real care means investing in someone's long-term success. Care may include, right? How many times have we talked about this? Listening, encouragement, teaching, removing obstacles, honest feedback, and care may also include appropriate consequences. It was one of those things that as I listened to the leaders that I mentioned earlier, it was fascinating that they had no problems. And I'll throw into that leadership group Jason Hipp. I'll also throw into that group Kurt Payton. So when you think about how they lead, the expectations are incredibly clear. Here's what I need from you as an individual. Here's what we need from the department. Here's what we need from the overall organization. And they absolutely won't come off of that. And so, they're not afraid to have the hard conversation. And a couple of the managers, very good at having the hard conversation before expectations are not met. And so you hear managers talk about, all right, so here's the expectations. Here's what I believe is possible. Here's what we need to do. Let's talk about what happens if you do it. What happens if you don't? And let's establish what are going to be the clear consequences for achieving these expectations and or falling short. And we have that conversation before the opportunity arises, before the outcome presents itself. And so this is just one of those things where you go, so smart. And yet so few leaders do that. So when you think about the leadership conversation you need to have with folks, 4 parts. Communicate that you care, right? I value you. I want to see you succeed. Tell the truth. Be specific in that truth, right? Focus on observable, measurable behavior, right? Missed customer updates, repeated lateness, things like that versus, I don't think you're doing very well or I'm not happy with your work. Reinforce the expectation. Describe what good performance looks like. Connect the standard to the customers, to the teammate, to the culture, to the organization, and results. Now you got something. Make the expectation meaningful, not merely a manager preference. So that goes back to communicating the why. I'm not asking you to do this just because I woke up and that was the whim that I had today. I'm asking you to do this because here's how it fits into the overall organization. Here's how it relates not just to short-term success, but long-term success. And then the 4th aspect of this, provide support and create ownership. Ask questions like, what's getting in the way? What needs to change? What support would help you? What will you commit to doing? Notice all these questions start with what? And so, we've talked about you can look back at a previous episode. We talked about the monkey, the Harvard Business Review idea of the 1-3-1. When an employee approaches you with an issue and you imagine that issue is in the form of a monkey, the team member's goal is to give their leader their monkey. And the leader has the 1-3-1, which some of you do just naturally. All right, so they come to you with a problem. You ask the first question, the one. All right, what specifically are you dealing with here? What's truly the root of this problem? And then you ask the three. All right, so what three things have you done to solve this? Kind of an assumptive, kind of close, right? What three things have you already done? Maybe the only thing that they've done is approach you. So we're going to make the positive assumption here, and then the last one is after they list the things that what three things they have done, or we transfer into what three things could you do. Then we ask them for the one, right? Of all those things that you talked about, which one are you going to do next, first? What's your first step? And so once again, all what questions, right? All driving to create support and empower and create ownership for the issue and for the results. So, the thing, as you think about this, right, it's so simple. As I talk about it, you're like, well, duh. But like I said at the very beginning, you all have a natural imbalance. You have a natural home base. There's parts of this, as you're listening to it, you go, man, I do that so well. And then there's parts of it, as I talked about it, you became incredibly uncomfortable. And so, that's the part that made you tense or made you even question, oh, man, how would I do that? What would that look like? When would I do that? That's the part that you have to lean into. So, your closing challenge, identify just one person on your team who would need either encouragement or clarity, right? Maybe they need coaching or accountability, or maybe it's time to have a difficult conversation with them. Incidentally, one of our most popular podcast episodes, actually it's a 4-part series about having difficult conversation, has gotten more listens than just about anything else Mark and I have ever done. So we know this is one that's important to a lot of you. Maybe a challenge would be have one high expectation conversation this week where you walk away and you go, okay, I believe I clearly communicated you matter to me and what you do matters. So, yeah, you're thinking, that's a lot, Mike. Well, if you're struggling with this, Mark and I can definitely help. So when you think about high care, high expectations, this is strong leadership, and it doesn't take a genius. It just requires you to operate out of your comfort zone, away from your natural home base. And like I said, if you need help with that, by all means, listen to our podcasts. Our emails are in the comments. And we've also got, for free, podcasts on all elements of what I've just talked about. So avail yourselves of those things. Looking forward to having Mark back with us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our all-time favorite announcer. He works for free, but we do love him. Please take it away, Mr. Wolf.
And that, I guess, is that. It doesn't take a genius. No rights reserved, nothing trademarked, copyrighted, or even original. Feel free to give it to anyone, anytime, using any and all media formats. Warning, Mark and Mike may or may not make another one. I'm your announcer, and I did not get paid a nickel to do this. They won't even let me tell you my name. So until next time, if there is a next time, stay safe, be well.
That's good enough.